for me, I never listened what Messi did in 2014. Like I was like, in the groups, he was amazing. Knockout stage, but I think in this was where like, you when the team needed you, you were there.
Yeah,
And in the knockout stages, okay, Messi, we need you just to do something, make something happen, and he was
yeah.
there.
To be the greatest player or the best player the world has ever seen, all Messi winning the World Cup, all it does is just gives more credence to the argument that if you want to be the best player in the history of the sport, winning the World Cup is an absolute must.
The best European doesn't have a World Cup. So what are we saying? So if you're saying that the greatest European player doesn't have a World Cup, but the three greats Conmebol, take a pick, they all have a World Cup. What are we saying about Europe? So can you now see why it was important for Messi to win the World Cup? Because something struck me. So, like, whenever I look at news, I just look at Twitter and so forth. And I don't know who it was. Someone sends me something in the DM, and I think there's like a Conmebol museum, and the Conmebol museum, you see Pele holding the old World Cup trophy from 1950. Is
No, I
that
think it
70?
was
No,
thick. No,
70.
70.
From 1970. Okay, because he looks older. So from 70, then you have Maradona holding the World Cup from 86, and then next day you now have Messi holding that World Cup, of course, from 2022. And when you just saw that, you're like, you can now see why this is so important. Because for so long, people said that he didn't need to win the World Cup. Like he's already as great as Maradona and Pele without the World Cup, based on everything he's done. I said, no, no, no. You have to get it done. You've got to win the World Cup. And I think Pele was the first guy who pretty much popularized the World Cup and made it so important and made it this global thing that people outside the football said, no, no, we have to win that. And once you see him winning the World Cup, how him and Argentina had to go through winning the World Cup and the way things that had to happen, and also Ricardo, that stat is so freaking crazy. The whole thing of 2-0 up, then
Yeah,
2-2, then 3-2, and everything. It's freaking crazy.
yeah.
But when you just see, it's like you now see why it is so significant. And I do feel that Messi is now realizing when you look at the homecoming game against Panama, when you look at now that statue next to Maradona and next to Pele, and just how that, because again, if let's just put a Messi statue there, he's holding up a UCL or a Ballon d'Or. Uh, it won't hit the same. It will hit the same. But him holding that World Cup next to his compatriots holding a World Cup next to the Don himself, Pele holding that World Cup, it's the circle is complete. It all makes sense. All the dots connect. So Ricardo, like, can you now see why he had to win the World Cup? That's without him winning the World Cup, it just wouldn't hit the same. His career.
You know, I definitely do agree because when you look at the talent that Messi is, there's no way you see a player that good and not have a World Cup in his credentials. It's unfathomable. Like Maradona did it, Pele did it, R9 did it, Ronaldinho did it. Like really, just all the greatest players of all time, majority at least, I'd say, have done it. Zidane has done it.
I mean, the only one that comes to my head is Cruyff.
Cruyff is probably the one name that definitely did miss out. But for Messi, look, this is
Hazard.
what
Hmm?
um there's if there's one thing that I've always believed as a football fan, and like obviously I'm a Messi guy, right?
Hmm.
I would say his career would have been a massive disappointment if he had never won the World Cup. No matter how much I support the guy,
I
it would
see.
have
For
been a
me,
massive disappointment.
I wouldn't say massive. No, for me, if he never won anything with Argentina, I would say that's a massive disappointment. I think if let's say he won the Copa America, not the World Cup, I'd just say disappointing, because based on just how good you are and how you've defined a generation, that World Cup is what just it's just is the ball there. So
It-
I think a massive massive disappointment would be crazy, but him like not winning the World Cup, you're like, okay, good, you have the talent and so forth. But that is the trophy. That is the trophy that means everything. That is footballing's trophy. It's footballing's prize.
Yeah, and the one thing, like I'll always say this, and it always bothered me, even as a football fan, and whether you indulge in the Messi Ronaldo debate, there's one thing that both sets of fanboys have always done, and it's always gatekeep Messi and Ronaldo about their success in the World Cup. Because if we're gonna be honest, If you look at all of Ronaldo's World Cups, he hasn't been great in any of them. If you look at all of Messi's World Cups,
Mm,
he's only really been great. I'd say one and a half, because I think the 2014 one, he
mm.
was good, but that's
Yeah, he
it. He
wasn't
wasn't
great.
great.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
wasn't great. Like, he was good. And then this one, this is an all-timer performance. This is one of the best performances from top to bottom, from start to finish. Messi. So you're really talking about the two greatest players in 10 World Cup tries. Only one campaign from both players was genuinely very, very good.
yeah,
So that speaks a lot to the difficulty of the World Cup. And
yeah.
not only, it's not even like necessarily just about their ability, because nobody denies their ability. It's the mental aspect of the game. And I think all the fragilities that we've always said about Messi may have had, this tournament kind of puts all that to bed. Like, you can't call Messi a choke. You can't call Messi whatever you want to call him, because he quite literally performed in every single stage of the World Cup, and that's pretty a unique feat that not many players have done. But going back to
No,
what I
no,
said
no, no, no,
before.
because I think that's why I said, like, my thing is, look, we can compare performances. I think I still feel what is considered the greatest performance by an individual at a World Cup is still Maradona
Yeah,
'86.
for sure, for sure.
Like that,
But
that still is. But my thing though is, for me, I never received what Messi did in 2014. Like, I was
mhm.
like, in the groups, he was amazing. Knockout stage, but I think in this was where, like, aha, you when the team needed you, you were there.
Yeah,
And in
for
the
sure.
knockout stages, okay, Messi, we need you just to do something, make something happen, and he
Yeah,
was there.
yeah.
So that was the what was
And I
key.
think, for like it's going back to both of them gatekeeping the World Cup. I think this was just the coping mechanism that both sets of fanboys had, that they couldn't perform at the highest of level. We always say that Champions League is the highest level, which on a technical aspect, I would agree that it is the highest level. But
Mm.
when you're talking about the highest, when you add the element of pressure, of mental fortitude, the World Cup is it's unrivaled.
No, no,
Uh,
no, oh, sorry. I mean, do you know what the best way to explain it? This way to explain it between the World Cup and the Champions League. Champions League is hard, but remember, the players you're playing with, you you probably know them better than your family. So these are guys that
mhm.
you're training with every single day. The thing about the World Cup is, okay, you're not seeing the very best of the best and so forth with teams who train so much, but because you don't know these players so well, and all you can rely on is the cultural understanding you have
Yeah,
of the game,
yeah,
it is a lot harder because I don't know. All I know about this place is that, okay, we have an Argentinian way of viewing, we have a Brazilian way of viewing this, we have a German way of viewing this, and also there is a smaller margin of error because it's every 4 years. It's
okay.
like,
Yep.
as I did see the Mbappe in halftime
Oh, the
speech
half, I did see it. Yeah, it was
where
great.
he said, "Look, guys, this is once every 4 years. If there's anything to bust your balls, it's now, because who knows whether you guys will be back in, because 4 years is a long damn time. So you
Yeah,
cannot mess up this
no,
opportunity." So
for sure. But it's like going back to what I was saying. It's we back to the gatekeeping. Like, it, you can't what Messi winning the World Cup. Forget about what it means for him, what it means to the sport of football, because when there's one day there's going to be another player who are as good as Messi, or probably if not better, because we always said this about Pele, we said this about Maradona. There's always going to be somebody. It's just a matter of time to be the greatest player or the best player the world has ever seen. All Messi winning the World Cup, all it does is just gives more credence to the argument that if you want to be the best player in the history of the sport, winning the World Cup is an absolute must. That's like, and I'm sorry that might hurt some Cristiano
non-negotiable.
Ronaldo
It
fans,
is non-negotiable.
because
Non-negotiable.
because I've even said it myself as a Messi fan. Had Messi not won the World Cup, I personally feel, viewing his entire career, I can't undeniably call him the greatest. He could be one of, sure, but eventually, when it comes to the World Cup, nobody that good can you can't. Messi being that good of a player, it's hard to fathom that he's never been good at a World Cup. And the one thing why the World Cup is so significant, and I actually read this, and it's actually pretty incredible. Ever since Messi won the World Cup, I have never seen so many people disrespect the World Cup and what it is, right? Now, obviously, because Messi won it, but whatever, they can live in their delusion to grasp how hard winning the World Cup is. And I actually saw this. Yes, it is a 7 game tournament,
Mm.
but we're not going to reduce it just down to 7 game tournament. And the reason why is because in the World Cup, you're only afforded one game. You're only afforded one loss in the whole tournament, and that loss has to come in the group stage because you need a minimum of a win and a tie to go through to the next round in the knockout rounds. Now, once you get to the knockout rounds, you cannot afford to lose. So that means out of the 7 games, you can only lose one game, and that one game you lose has to come within the first 3 games. After that, you cannot lose. In the Champions League, you could quite literally, out of the 13 games, you could lose 6 times and still go on to win the Champions.
Yeah, yeah.
Lose 3 games in the qualifiers or the group stage and then win the last 3 because you can go through on 9 points. You can lose the first leg of the round of 16 of the quarterfinals and the semifinals, and you can still win the Champions League. There is no debate which tournament is significantly harder to win. The fact that you can't even afford more than one loss makes the World Cup unrivaled.
Oh, no, I mean, even as well. Like again, it's also the low margin of error. If you mess up, it isn't all right. Better luck next year, like the NBA Finals or like the Super Bowl or like the Champions League. If you mess up, 4 years. 4 years is a damn long time in football because you don't know whether you're going to have a massive injury, whether you're going to decline, or what's going to happen to you, and so forth. And I think that what was so severe, I think what has helped Messi so much is his consistency. Because I remember something you said. I remember I forgot when it was, and you said like not many guys have a second chance
Yeah.
when you mess up a World Cup final. Because I remember how I felt in '98 because Ronaldo was like my hero, and I was like, oh my god, is he going to have a second chance? Because I was like, I looked at what happened, the way it happened, and then I saw his injury. I was like, oh, it's done. So the Ronaldo story would always be, man, what could have been? This phenomenal player who changed how strikers played, what could have been? And what he did in Osu was so incredible because, as he said,
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
his knee exploded, and it was.
I
I'm basically saying, Osu was all about willpower. He was nowhere near his best physically. Nowhere
oh,
near.
for
What
sure.
he did in Auto was all about willpower.
Yeah, for sure. It's like how can I say? It's like I definitely do agree that some players do never get a second chance, and for Messi, this was like it almost felt like it was destiny, like for the
Mm.
stars to align for him. Like I'll be honest with you, I genuinely did not believe Argentina was ever going to win the World Cup. Even when they got to the final, I thought they were going to lose to France. But there's like some people in the comments are saying,
No. See, here's my thing. When Brazil, when Croatia beats Brazil, I was like, there's a genuine chance because when they see if they face Brazil, okay, it's a toss up. I just felt that when Croatia beats Brazil, and I saw how much weaker France were, I was
no,
like,
well,
if they make the final,
for
anything could
sure,
happen.
for
But I
sure,
think most likely they'll
but
win. But so it was
France.
Brazil losing to Croatia.
But France, yeah, I mean, you could argue that. Yeah, I will agree. But like some people have said, there's certain players who deserve exceptions when it comes to the World Cup, and there's genuinely is some players like because that's sometimes dependent on the country you are born in. So, for example, like some people like to say, Cruyff had an all-time performance, so you can excuse him a bit. I don't know how much I can excuse him because the fact that Netherlands has been to the finals 3 times and have yet to win, you can't really say they aren't a country with history.
Mm.
For example, Portugal. Eusebio went to the semifinals, I believe.
Yeah,
Quarterfinals.
'66.
Was it in
Quarterfinal.
So,
quarterfinals?
so, so
They finished
I
third
thought
place
it
before.
was the semis in
I
'66.
think it was semis because they
Okay.
finished third place before.
Mm.
Um, and then they've had generations of great players. Now, I'm not saying you need to win the World Cup to have history in the World Cup. You can have a top finish. Look at Croatia. Croatia has like second and third place, and this country was made in the 90s.
Yeah,
So they have history in the World Cup. Now, players like Modric, players like Zico, for example, although he played for Brazil, so it's a bit different. Players like Johan Cruyff. There's some players, in my view, that I genuinely just ask to have a World Cup where it will remember you for being one of the best players, much like Forlan did in
there we go.
2010,
I was just about to
right?
say something. Yeah, yeah.
So I don't expect you to win because I can understand that maybe you come from a country that isn't a World Cup like
Mm.
heavyweight or doesn't come from a team that tends to produce great players. But if you're an all-time great player, and a lot of Ronaldo fans are going to take this as a slight, but
Let's
I
do it.
find it hard to believe that we have said that he is one of the greatest big game players, whatever big game means, which he is. I'm not denying that he
Mm.
isn't. He is one of those guys. He is one of the greatest goal scorers, if not the greatest goal scorer the sport has ever seen. But the fact that he's not been able to perform for Portugal in 5, mind you, there's only been like 4 players that's ever played 5 World Cups.
Mm.
I think it kind of like I wouldn't say that you can't ignore that is what I'm saying, and he should have done more in my opinion. But ultimately, it is what it is. It like I said, it's the biggest tournament, most pressure, and it all comes down to every 4 years. And if you can't show up, you can't show up.
You see, I'm gonna because it's a bit of a segue, but I don't want to really segue soon because I want to come back to something you said some time ago, Ricardo, which is linked into the whole Conmebol thing. But Mike, talk to me. So basically, so Conmebol basically released like a statue in the Conmebol museum. So you have Pele with his World Cup from '70, Maradona with his World Cup in '86, and Messi with his World Cup now. Can you now see why it was so significant for Messi to win the World Cup, or do you feel that even if he didn't win the World Cup, he'd still be able to be regarded as one of the greats and stand next to Pele and Maradona? Or can you see why he had to win the World Cup for him to be able to be in that same conversation as Maradona and Pele?
To me, watching Messi since 2006, I mean, he had to win a World Cup. And I think when you come from Argentina, there's expectations. And that expectation is built from Maradona and what he did in '86. So if you're Messi, you have to raise your level and perform at the national team because they don't care about Barcelona. They don't care what you do at Barcelona. That's for people who support Barcelona. They care what you do for the Argentina national team. And what he was doing for Argentina national team was losing to Chile twice in a final, not doing anything in 2010 in the quarterfinal against Germany. 2014, he had his moments in the group stage. I don't think in the knockout stage he was the best that we saw. Like Di Maria scored the winner against Switzerland. Higuain scored the winner in the quarterfinal against Belgium. So I think for Messi, this World Cup, it felt almost like the last dance, like Michael Jordan. It really felt like that. There's going to be a Netflix documentary in 10 years' time just discussing about how much effort Messi put in. You can just tell he used every ounce of his body to give that one last effort because he knew this was it. This was it.
This was it. Like you're not coming back to America in 2026.
No, you're not. And he knew with this team, especially. I think you have to give a lot of praise to Scaloni. We can talk about the players like Enzo Fernandez stepping up, Julian Alvarez, these sort of guys, but I think the work that Scaloni did, because Messi hasn't had great managers. I mean, Jorge Sampaoli is a tattooed bulldog. That's what he is. He just shouts a bunch of stuff on the sideline. Never rated the manager. He's had Maradona, great player, horrific manager. I mean, 2010, I don't know what tattoo he was doing.
Like, I love Maradona and so forth.
No, but manager,
I will never forgive him for picking Higuain over a striker who was
Diego Milito,
a treble.
Yeah. I mean, but he had a great moment as manager. Remember when he did the belly flop against Peru in 2010 qualifiers? Ricardo remembers that in the rain. That
was bloody amazing, bro. That
was bloody amazing.
I think because you could also how Maradona was different because he was basically wearing this flag. It wasn't an Argentine flag. It was like a red flag. And I think he was basically bringing spirituality. I told you, that 2010 it was all vibes. Do you know what's so crazy? Because he's normally in a tracksuit. But I think his daughter said that no, you have to look proper. So they forced him to wear a suit in the World Cup and everything.
No, because they had to win those last two games to qualify for the 2010 World Cup.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Martin Palermo,
Yeah, Martin Palermo. So they had to win this World Cup, in my opinion. And I was actually quite on board. I was like, you know what? I've seen good performances. I think winning that Copa America, if they didn't win that Copa America, I don't think they would have won this World Cup.
Yeah,
I think that winning the Copa America really gave them that sort of edge and that belief and that, we can actually do this. It doesn't have to be just Messi. We got big game player like Di Maria. We got Rodrigo de Paul. We got Romero. We got these guys. But I think now Messi winning the World Cup, he was one of the greats. To me, now he's the greatest because when you have all the Champions Leagues, Ballon d'Ors, okay, I don't really care about Ballon d'Ors, but winning the Champions League and now finally winning the World Cup, and he didn't just ghost. He scored in the group stage, scored in the round of 16, scored in the quarterfinals, scored in the semifinals, scored in the final. HH said, give me a knockout stage goal. He said, okay, hold this. Here's a round of 16 quarterfinals, semifinal, final goal.
He also man of the match all 4 games of the
match. Wait, hold on. Those man of the matches, that's all subjective. No. What is objective is scoring in knockout games. Then that's objective.
And then he sat down Guivardio for that assist to Julian Alvarez in the semifinals. I mean, Messi really, he just turned back the clock and said, I'm putting in the greatest performance I possibly can to finally bring. And you just saw how the streets of Buenos Aires was ridiculous when they won the World Cup.
But Mike, here's the thing though. but he should have scored the winning goal though. Like R9. Come
I
on,
mean,
just score
come.
the winning
It
goal.
was penalty shootout. What do you want? And then they just completely collapsed.
But I'm just like, my guy scored both goals in the final. So my guy did not let's go to penalties. That's why I said, look, it's perfect, but Mbappe.
But
Mbappe
then
just said,
HH.
hey,
But
no, Mbappe
did,
said,
wait.
check me out,
But
check me out.
HH, your guy as well, Maradona. Did he score in the '86 final?
Can I respond? No. Can I respond?
No, but it's a yes or no question.
Who gave the beautiful pass to Bruno Chaga? That pass was bloody amazing. Did you see?
It was
It was a good pass.
It was a good pass. It was a good pass.
Come on, man. Come on. No.
And we have to
look,
take this into account as well, HH. Conmebol, I will always say this, is the most difficult qualifiers to go through. And how many goals has he scored in an international career?
No, Mike. Hold that.
Okay.
That's going to be needed for the next topic. And now, this is what I want to say. So, Ricardo, you made a point here. So this could be like a little bit of a segue, but I'll try and match it through. So, Ricardo, you said that Cristiano Ronaldo is the greatest European player ever.
Well,
Mike, do you agree with that? That Cristiano Ronaldo is the greatest European player?
Yes.
Wait.
Yes.
When did I say that? When did I say that?
It's literally in the intro to the Hangout.
You did say that.
Shit. I was being nice.
No, but say, if you take everything into consideration, he's truly the greatest European player of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
So my thing is this. So let's say like we are like what's the game? It's like I don't know whether it's like we're playing like Pokemon. Let's say we're playing Pokemon. And one guy is like a Pokemon master of South America and a Pokemon master of Europe. And we have to do like a final battle. So if I'm the South American Pokemon master, any of my 3 monsters has a World Cup. So I can say, okay, I'm going to put this guy. So if let's say you want to choose your best European, so your best European doesn't have a World Cup. So what are we saying? So if you're saying that the greatest European player doesn't have a World Cup, but the 3 greats Conmebol, take a pick, they all have a World Cup. What are we saying about Europe? So are we still confident in saying that Cristiano Ronaldo should represent Europe as Europe's finest?
I mean,
because if I say Zidane, people now attack me.
I don't think that's a crazy take though. If you think that, because one of my brother-in-law, he loves Zidane. He loves Zidane, and
Zidane is the guy.
He thinks he's the best he's ever seen, which is fine. It's if you think Zidane's the best, I have no problem. He's an incredible player, but I think I'm not gonna lie. I think the fact that when you live in a generation where you and this other guy go toe to toe, year in, year out, and then one thing that was always eluding both of you was the World Cup, and the other guy wins the World Cup and you don't. I think it kind of just hurt your standing a little bit, because there's no way you can. It's like I said, Messi winning the World Cup, like it just gives more credit to the argument that you need the World Cup to be amongst the greatest, and especially in Europe when you have Franz Beckenbauer, you have Zinedine Zidane. I mean, that's really mainly the two. I mean, you could argue right under that is like Iniesta, but I mean, I wouldn't really.
No. I mean, you can't say that in it. So, but see, my thing though is that's just like, are we still saying? Because I saw Mike sort of twist his face. Are we still saying Cristiano Ronaldo is the greatest European player? Because there is no harm in saying that. Because when you look at the guy's accolades, what he's done in his club career and so forth, you can say it. But my thing though is, if I now say Europe, let me help you guys out. Pick Zidane as your Mewtwo or as your Pikachu, because Zidane, we know what he did for Real Madrid. We know what he did in a UCL final. We know what he's done at the World Cup. We know what he did in 90s. We know what he did in 06. So I think Zidane is a better representation of Europe based on just how good he was, what he did in the club game and what he did in the international game.
Yeah, but you can't
Mike,
deny,
am I crazy?
But you can't. If Ronaldo didn't win a Euros, you might have an argument. But he won a Euros.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
I know he didn't play in the final, but I think.
Don't let me talk about that. Euros.
But Ronaldo's aura won them that final. Let's be honest here.
My bad.
What the heck was that? That was the bottle. Ronaldo's aura won them that final because he was going madness. He wasn't. Fernando Santos wasn't managing that final. It was Cristiano Ronaldo.
Hold on, Mike.
I genuinely do believe
Are
that.
you saying that there's a Cristiano Ronaldo tax of how he did in that final? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
So I mean, look at him on the sideline. Do you think Fernando Santos was actually giving tactical ideas?
That was passion.
Because
that was passion.
you know what he did in his first.
Passion.
It was passion, exactly. You know, we like those passion merchants in football, but I think you would have an argument if Ronaldo didn't win a Euros, but he showed up in that semi-final against Wales. I know he didn't show up in the quarterfinal against Poland, and obviously he didn't play in the final, but I think Ronaldo still has a lot of credibility in the bank. And I know he hasn't scored a knockout stage goal in the World Cup, but 2010, they were up against Spain, 1-0. I think was it Puyol who got the winning goal in that game?
Villa.
Or was it Villa? Oh, no, it was Villa, sorry.
You mean against Portugal in 2010 World Cup?
Yeah, 2010 World Cup.
Villa. You know, Puyol was against Germany.
Yeah, it was Villa. And then 2014, okay, that was just horrific.
Yeah.
I mean, Paulo Bento was a terrible manager anyway, and they lost the first game 4-0 to Germany. I knew they were done by then. 2018, okay, Uruguay. So,
nah, let's stop it.
2018, they should have won that.
Yeah, that's off the back of winning the Euros. They had experience winning a trophy.
Exactly. They had some momentum going into that World Cup, but yeah, I just don't know. With Ronaldo, when it comes to World Cups, sometimes I feel like it's just the team around him as well. I'm not trying to give any excuses, but honestly, I just feel like with the team around him and the managers he's had, it's kind of similar to Messi. Like, we gave Messi excuses in occasions like final 2015. You had managers like Maradona. You can kind of give the same excuse for Ronaldo in occasions, but not scoring a knockout stage goal. That's on him.